There's a new update. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to refresh. Okay. All right. Welcome back to Comp 2452. Our cookie clicker game is going pretty well. We are able to buy time machines where we can bring cookies from the past before they were even eaten. And there's lots of upgrades. The kitten upgrades are really good because they improve the power of our milk. And I'm just going to buy a few more of these things. And then I think the last thing that we'll do for today is, oh, hey, you're still here. Awesome. The last thing I want to do today here is we'll go to our little grimoire and we'll summon some curses. Our summoning cookies backfired, and now we have like halved the cookies per second that we can currently get. Yes. This is not an ocean of blood. This is the milk that we currently have. It is strawberry flavored milk right now. Yes, it's not blood. It's strawberry flavored milk. And I did this with the other section, and I want to do it with you too, because I think this is an important part of it. If you make this window small enough, I've already got the achievement, but if you make this window small enough so that the cookie is in the milk, you get an achievement that is dunked the cookie. Yeah. So our cookie clicker game is continuing to go. Let's upgrade the banks. And now we have a stock market game that we can play. I never figured out how to do this, so I'm not going to bother trying to figure out how to do it live and in person right now. But there's a stock market, and we can buy like cookie commodities and stuff, which is, gosh, I don't know. Even this has changed because the last time I played this, there were no stockbrokers that you could purchase. If you haven't figured it out, this game is really deep. At the top, it looks like it's really simple because you're literally just clicking on a cookie, but there's so much depth to this game, and we haven't even ascended yet. There's a whole other mini game that we're not able to see in the UI that we've got right now. All right. I hope that you've all had a great weekend. I mean, the cold has finally come to us. It's finally Winnipeg proper wintertime, and like walking through even just the short walk from the Helen Glass Center through the parkade to here is quite cold. So welcome back to Winnipeg, everybody. This is a small, like, absolute tangent, but I learned only in my adult life that the word parkade is a distinctly Canadian term. This is not something that's used anywhere else. It's a real Canadianism. Parkade is like the parking structure that's there. So if you've never heard this word parkade, that's what it is. What I want to do today is kind of continuing the stuff that we've been working on. Today, I want to spend a lot more time doing some coding. So last week we spent some time thinking about this idea of what the MVC architecture is. And the goal that I had for you last week was really to have some sense of what MVC is at a super high level, at an abstract level. So what is the responsibility, or what are the three parts of MVC, this idea of a model, a view, a controller? How do they interact with each other at an abstract high level? So drawing arrows between these things, what are they doing with each other to do interactions? And then a little bit of like, why would we want to choose this architecture over something else? We have spent a tiny bit of time talking about HTML in the context of implementing simple graphical interfaces. And today what I'd like to do is start to implement MVC. So I want to start building up a slightly larger example that includes all the different components of this MVC architecture, including the view part, which is going to start having us writing some HTML code to represent the state of the objects that we're interacting with. Before we get to anything else, I do want to make an announcement, which is that we've got a couple of TAs for the course. And the TAs this term, rather than coming to class with us, they're offering office hours throughout the term. So they're going to be in two offices on E2 on the 4th floor. This is the same floor as where my office is. These offices are kind of in the same hallway and along the same side of the hallway as the computer labs. So if you were doing any computer labs in there for Comp 1010 or Comp 1020, they're just in and along that hallway. The office hours that they're offering are on Wednesdays. Ty is going to be in his office from 10 to 11:30 on Wednesdays, and Abhinav is going to be in his office from 2:30 to 3:30 on Fridays. So in addition to the office hours that I'm offering, you can also go take a quick walk and talk to those folks, and they'll be able to give you some help with course material. So here is our architecture. The place that we got to last time was we've got three different parts to this architecture. We've got the view, we've got the controller, and we've got the model. The model, I'm going to say this is the really core part of this whole system. The other things are necessary to do stuff with this model, but the model itself is the core part of this MVC architecture. The model is really the thing that represents, as we had seen before, our domain model, but now it begins to incorporate things like the logic for our application, and it also then has some responsibility to do some persistence related to itself. For this week, we're going to ignore the persistence part. We're not going to think too much about that. These objects will have states. They will be kept somewhere, but we're not going to worry too much about persistence. We'll think about that a little bit later. But to start, we are going to think about how these things are representing the domain model, the objects in our system, and the logic in our system. The view is what the person sitting in front of the machine is actually going to interact with. When they open their web browser, this is the thing that they're going to see. The view itself, as we build it, will be composed of smaller parts. There will be different parts of the page that will represent different objects or the state of different objects. But this is going to be what is effectively our UI layer for this system. We're going to be implementing this in some combination of TypeScript and HTML. This is going to kind of flow between those things. So we will have TypeScript files that have HTML in them, and we will also have separate HTML files to represent this view structure. And it will all be kind of bundled together to set up this user interface. The user interface that we've got with this view is going to have buttons. The buttons are going to be the way that the person sitting in front of our machine is going to be able to interact with our application. This is how they're going to ask for stuff to actually happen. So on our view, there will be buttons. I'm going to click on the buttons. The buttons will provide inputs to the controllers that I have. And the controllers are going to be responsible for coordinating the inputs that are provided by this view when I click on this button, and asking the domain model either to create instances of itself, so calling constructors in domain model classes, or calling methods on existing instances of domain models. The controller may have some responsibility to maintain some states, but it's ultimately going to be responsible for just doing this coordination with the model classes themselves. As the model classes get updated, they're going to be telling this view, hey, I've changed values of myself. You should change the presentation of yourself to reflect the current state that I've got. We're going to use a design pattern to implement this whole idea of having the model talk to the view, and that's going to be basically a structure that's called listeners. We want to have these things listening for events that are being created or raised by this domain model part of our application. Does anybody have any questions about MVC as an architecture before we start typing code? Yeah.
Like last time we did the n-layer architecture, and we actually separate our custom packages.
Yeah.
Is this like a theoretical one, or is this like actual separation?
So the question is about ultimately using packages to separate concerns of the different parts of the architecture. With the n-tier or the layered architecture, yeah, we had a UI and a logic and a persistence package. We're going to have something pretty similar for this. So we'll have a package, I'm going to put air quotes around this, a package. We're going to have a module or a folder for our view. We're going to have a module or a folder for our controller, and we'll have, a module or a view for, or a folder for our model classes. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So what I want to do today is I want to continue taking a look at this stuff, this TypeScript in the web browser. We're going to start from where we left off last class. So if you want to follow along with what I'm doing today in your own terminal, Please pull or otherwise get a copy of the Git repository that I've linked to under today's lecture section. Last time what we did was we wrote a small class to represent this idea of a Pokemon in the project. We'll write another class today, but then what we're going to do is move on to starting to think about the physical and logical organization of code. So I want to start using folders and modules in TypeScript to separate the concerns of the different parts of this architecture that we've got. And finally, what I want to do is I want to spend some time building up this MVC implementation. So some minimal implementation of MVC for the problem that we're going to be looking at. The ultimate problem that I want to implement in MVC here is this. This is the task that I want to implement in MVC. I think I've inverted the arrow shapes here, but the arrow direction is what I want to have here. So we're going to have this thing that is the trainer view, and I want to be able to add a Pokemon to my team. That's it. That's all I want to be able to do with this. I want to add a Pokemon to my team, and then I want the view to update itself to say this Pokemon was added, or this is the current team that I have for my Pokemon. So I'm going to pop over to my web browser, to my terminal here. And we're going to do a bunch of different things, all in the terminal here today. The very first thing that I want to do is I want to start taking the stuff that I've got right now. I've dumped it all into this main.ts, and I want to start doing physical and logical organization of the code that I'm writing. The first thing I want to do is take this assert function out, and I want to have a more general assert function, because if I have assert positive, and assert not empty, and assert this, and assert that, and assert x, and assert y, it's going to be quite a lot. So really what I want to have is just an assertion function that I'm able to use from other places in my application. So I am going to first make a new file. And this new file is going to be a module that contains just assertions in it. So I'm going to add a new file here, and I'm going to call this assertions.ts. Inside of assertions, I want to take this chunk of code that I've got here. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to go and I'm going to open up assertions.ts, and I'm going to paste that in here. I'm going to change this assertion. I don't want this to be assert positive anymore. I want this to just be assert. I'm going to take a Boolean expression, and you can tell me what you're asserting. And I want to also accept a message that's going to be included in the assertion or the error that gets raised. So I'm going to call this function assert. It's going to take as input an expression. I'm going to say that this is any. I'm going to allow you to pass anything to me. And what I'm going to change this to be is not that it asserts that val is number, but rather it just asserts. So it asserts val. This is a thing. It's a true statement that I've got here. I also want to add a message to this. So I'm going to say message, and I want this to be of type string. I've taken this out and I put it into its own file, but I need to be able to use this function that's in this file in other places in my code. TypeScript and JavaScript, they don't really have a sense of packages, and they don't really have a sense of public classes in the same way that Java does. What they have instead is modules. For me to get access to the things that are in this module, this file, I need to export that. I need to say that this is something that's eligible to be used outside of this file. So I'm going to say here that I want to export this function, assert the warning that this is not used inside this file has gone away because I've effectively said, hey, this is a public function. I'm going to say that this is a public function. I want to be able to use it in other places in my code base. The last thing that I want to do here is I don't want to use just error. What I would like to do is define a custom exception type. So I'm going to say class assertion error extends error. So the structure of this is really similar to the custom exceptions that we were doing in Java. And what I'm going to say here is that this has a single constructor. It takes a message. It's of type string. And I'm going to call super with my string, with my message. So I'm just using the existing error class to represent this, but I want to have a special type for the kind of exception that I'm raising here. I'm going to change this to no longer be just error. I'm going to say assertion error here. And I don't want to say values must be positive. Instead, I'm going to say that I want to put the message that has been passed to me here. Just one E. Okay. Yeah.
Like the term module and a file, those are interchangeable in case of TypeScript?
For us, for now, the term module and file are effectively interchangeable, yes. Yeah.
Does it make sense to just call it assert? Because like we're checking the number, it's a number. Calling assert doesn't really make sense.
Calling
It's
it
so generic.
calling assert doesn't really make sense because I'm changing the meaning of this function now. Now I just want it to be an assertion function that's going to take an expression. So I'm gonna go back to the code that calls this and change it to actually reflect what I want this function to be. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna open up a terminal here on the side so that I have both main.ts and this assertion.ts. I no longer have this assert positive available to me. I've cut it out of this file, so it's gone. What I want to have here is I want to be able to say, I want to use this assertion function. So I'm going to have to import this function from this other file. I'm going to come to you in just a second, okay? So I want to say import. So import is the same as what we had in Java. This time we're not giving a package name. We're going to specify the thing that we want to import that has been exported from that thing. So I'm going to say here that I want to import assert, and my type completion here is helping me out. I want to import assert from, and then the file name, so /assertions.ts. Here, and then I'm going to change this to no longer be assert positive. It's going to be assert, a Boolean expression greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0, and the message that I want to give to this is HP must be greater than 0. Okay, so I'll hold these up here for just a second. Yeah. It's not just limited to the directory, no. So my next task is going to be, I want to take Pokemon out of this file and put it into a model folder. I want to start making a folder that represents all the things that are going to be in my model. And will include the full relative path structure for getting to that file from there, yeah. So to answer your question here, I no longer want this to be assert positive as a function. I just want assert, and then I'll pass the logical expression that's going to be tested by that assert function itself.
Like it passing that as a Boolean.
So this is being passed as a Boolean here, yes. This is a Boolean expression that's being passed to that. It's true or false. Truthy or falsy, yeah. Yeah.
I'm just wondering how that works when it gets to the expression inside of assert. It just says invalid less than 0.
Oh gosh, sorry. Thank you for catching that. That's probably related to the. Thank you. I want this to be if val. That's what I want to say here. That's what I want to say here. If val, not if val greater than 0. Thank you. Yeah.
It would have no type errors because we're trying to kind of assert something, and like in the if statement, we're trying to say if this is true or false. That means that we aren't necessarily passing a Boolean, but there was specified that it's an and. If we pass something else, would this raise an exception?
So the question is about passing something that's not a Boolean and then using it in this expression. I have to ask a question about your experience with JavaScript. Did you talk about the idea of truthiness versus true and falsiness versus false? So in Python and in JavaScript, things that are not null and not undef are truthy values. So if I pass, for example, if I were to pass just this.hp to this, like that, this would assert that this is not 0. That's what it would assert. 0 is a falsy value. 1 or a non-zero value is truthy. If I pass this expression, well, then it's literally true or false that's being passed to it. If I pass a string, the non-empty string is a truthy value and the empty string is a falsy value.
TypeScript doesn't restrict that. We can use multiple things and they kind of would be like type converted.
In this expression, they will be determined to be truthy or falsy. Yes, yeah. Okay, are we good with this so far? Yeah.
Anything that's not Boolean but gives
A non-zero or non-null or non-undef. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I've got this assertion.ts file. I'm going to close it. I'm not going to make any more changes to this yet. Yeah.
Positive. So this dot HP is greater than 0, so when HP is like 32, then it wouldn't if value is true and we're throwing a message that must be greater than 0? Or should it be the other?
If this is 32,
Or if this dot HP is 32,
yeah.
if that's true, then we're throwing the
Oh gosh, thank you. My logic is inverted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes.
And those three things would be the categories for truthiness, like anything other than a Boolean that is non-zero, non-null, and non-undefined is truthy, and those three are the old categories.
I may not be giving you a comprehensive list of all the things that are truthy and falsy, but those are definitely truthy or falsy, yes. Okay, thank you all for catching my typing errors because I'm obviously really bad at typing, yes. Okay, so I'm going to close this file now. I'm not coming back to this because as far as I'm concerned, this is complete. I don't really need to make any more changes to this assertion. I don't need to add more assertions because I now just have a general assert function that I can use here. So I'm going to close this, this file, and I'm going to bring back my Explorer here, and I want to start making this new folder structure. So under my source folder, this is where all my TypeScript stuff is going to go. Under my source folder, I want to make a new folder here, and I'm going to call this model. And with this, I want to end it with a slash so it's interpreted as a directory. And then I want to make a new file for this Pokemon class itself. So I'm going to call this Pokemon.ts. I'm going to cut this entire class. I'm going to open up Pokemon.ts here, and I'm going to paste it into Pokemon. I'm going to go back and get that assertion from main because I'm not using it anywhere else. And then to your question here, you can see that there's an error. It can't find this file. So I need to import this as a relative path. So this ... says from the parent directory, I want to import this. The last thing that I need to do here is similar to what I did with that function. I need to export this. This is now in a module. I want to make it available for other files to use. I'm going to use a different export here. I'm going to say export default class. The difference between these is going to change the way that we're doing the importing. This is, at least as far as I'm using it, this is convenience to save me 2 keystrokes and not have to put those curly braces around the import that I'm doing here. So I'm going to split this one more time so that we can see both of these at the same time. Okay, and over here, I'm going to open up main. And what I want to import here is import Pokemon from the folder that I've got this in is model, and the file is pokemon.ts. The way that I'm using it, the difference is export default class allows me to import this bare name without having to import within the curly braces that I have here. I think there are actual functional differences between the two of those things, but as far as I'm concerned, that's the difference that I want us to be able to care about here. You can export multiple things from a module, so you can have multiple assertion functions if you wanted to, but for me, for now, this is kind of all I care about, is that I can import this bare class name. Can you repeat that, please? I'm really just trying to show that I've got these two options. One is to be able to do the export default class, and I can do the import without those curly braces. If I were to just do export class here, like this, what I would need to do is import this with curly braces. That's the functional difference that I'm seeing with this right now. I believe that there are other differences here, but for us, I don't really care about those things. Yeah.
So with our generic assert function, we now can assert anything that we would want?
Anything that you want, yeah. It's going to be more convenient than having dedicated functions for each of those things. Okay. All right. The next thing that I want to do here is I want to add a new class. I'm going to start typing this up fairly quickly because I don't want to dwell on what we're doing. What I want to add for this is a trainer class to be the thing that owns the Pokemon instances that we've got. So I'm going to switch over to this. I'm going to close this, this part. I'm going to open my Explorer. I'm going to add a new file to my model, and it's going to be called trainer.ts. And what I want to do in here is something quite similar to what I've got. So this is going to have Pokemon in it. I'm going to have an array of Pokemon as part of this trainer class. Okay. There's not a lot going on here. I've got a single private member that is the array of Pokemon that makes up my team. I have an accessor for this array so that I can get access to it in other places. And I have a method that's available to make mutations to that. So I want to be able to add members to my team using this. Okay. Now that I've got my model, I really want to be able to start interacting with the model that I have here. In the structure that we've got 3 parts. We've got the model. We're done the model for now. We're going to have to make changes to it soon, but we're done the model for now. We've got the view. This is what's showing us what the state of these values are. And we've got our controller. This is what's going to be responsible for doing things like creating instances of these classes and calling methods on those classes. My next logical step is that I want to start adding a controller that I'm able to interact with. So I want to make some changes to the existing structure that we've got in terms of the HTML file that shows up on the page. And I want to add a class that's going to be responsible for starting to do the interaction that we have with these 2 domain model objects. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I want to start taking a look at this file that's called index.html. This is that file that's just completely empty for now. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't have anything in it. When we created this project in the first place, everything that was on the page that showed up got stuffed into this, this tag or this element that's called a div. It has this ID of app. This is where everything was going to go. I'm going to add a new thing to this. I'm going to add a button. This is how I'm going to start interacting with the code that I've got. So to add a button, I will open a new tag that's called button. I want to be able to uniquely identify this because I want to be able to add behavior to it. I don't want to type the behavior in this HTML file. I want to add behavior to it from a TypeScript file. So I need to be able to uniquely identify this. And I'm going to say that the ID of this is called add Pokemon. And the value that I want to put inside of this button is the text that appears on the button. So I'm going to write ads, and I want this to be technically correct for what Pokemon is. So I'm going to do E acute here. That shows the E with the accent. This is accent aigu in French. I'm not sure what, I guess it's an acute accent in English. This is going to show up as add Pokemon as a button on my page right now. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to quickly pop to a different terminal. Going to make sure I'm in the right directory here. And I'm going to say npx vite. I want to run the server in the background so that I can have access to it. I'm going to open this up in my web browser. And way up there in the corner, we've got this fancy button. We've got a shiny button that we can click on. This button does not do anything. It doesn't do anything yet. That's OK. This is a good start. I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to go back to NeoVim here. I've added a button to my page. I'm going to go back to my File Explorer now, and I want to add a new folder. I want to start creating this controller class so that I can start defining the functionality that I want to have here. So I'll make a new folder under this source. It's going to be called controller. And under controller, I want to make a new file that's called trainer controller. I'm going to open this up. And I want to start writing this class. My controller class here is going to have a little bit of state. I want it to be responsible for having an instance of trainer in it. So I'm going to have a private variable here that's called trainer of type trainer. And the constructor for this controller class is going to make that instance of trainer as it starts. I need to import this. Import trainer from .. / so from the parent directory, there's a model folder. I want to import that. .ts. And I want to add the functionality that I want to implement. So the task that I'm trying to implement here is I want to be able to add a Pokemon to this trainer's team. I want to create a new instance of a Pokemon as a result of me asking to do this. The Pokemon class, when I save this, it's going to say can't find Pokemon, so I'm going to import it. And I need to pass an initial HP here. And I want to add that Pokemon to the team. For now, what I'm going to say is console.log. Added the Pokemon to the team, console.log, this.trainer. So that I can see in my log that some interaction has taken place.
Yeah, but later these domain model objects, they wouldn't really live within the controller.
They are going to, the instances we're creating are going to live here, yes. The controllers will have some responsibility of maintaining some state where it's necessary to maintain that state. As we're setting it up right now, yes, this trainer does need to live here. This is where we're going to maintain the state of what our application kind of currently looks like. We may move this out into the trainer class itself later. So it will have the responsibility of maintaining what the current trainer is and what all trainers are. But for now, this is where we're going to put this state is in our controller. Yeah. This is good. This is great. We've got this controller class. It now has some behavior, but it's still kind of inert. Like we can't actually invoke this in any way. The next thing that we've got to do is we've got to start hooking up the controller with the HTML document. I need to be able to say, when you click on this button, I want you to invoke this method on this instance of this class. So I'm going to go back to my main.ts now. Main.ts is the entry point for us as far as we are concerned. This is going to have some responsibility to make instances of things like controllers and connect those controllers to the HTML document as it's laid out initially so that we can start to interact with things here. So I no longer want to import Pokemon. I no longer want to create an instance of a Pokemon, and I no longer want to console.log that instance of Pokemon. So I'm going to delete everything that is in main.ts here. I do want to make an instance of this controller class. So I'm going to say let trainer controller. Whoops. I want to make a new instance of this trainer controller. I've got it imported there at the top. And once I have got this new instance of a trainer controller, I've got to hook up the method to the button. We've got to hook up, we've got to connect this method with the button itself. I'm going to open up to the side my HTML document. The first thing that we're going to need to do to hook up this connection between the class instance and the button that we've got there is we have to get a hold of the button itself in our code. We're going to use document. Document is this global object that's always available to us that refers to the HTML document itself. The method that we're going to invoke on this document object is query selector. Query selector is a way for us to get access to specific elements on the page using things like their identifiers. So query selector. The first argument that we pass to this is going to be the identifier or the thing that we want to use to find the element that we're looking for. In this case, the thing that we're looking for has an ID. The ID that we added here was add Pokemon. To find by ID, we use this number sign prefix. This says that this thing is going to be an ID that I'm looking for on the page. The element that I'm looking for has an ID of this. And the ID that I want to specify here is add Pokemon. So as this is right now, the .query selector here will give us an object that represents that button that's on line 12 of this HTML document. That does sound like a horror movie. Like the lights are going to start to flicker here. Oh my God, okay. Okay, so we've got this query selector. We've got access to this button. I'm going to say that, as before, I'm going to assert that this is not null. Exclamation point. I promise to you, TypeScript compiler, the thing that gets returned from this will not be null. So please let me invoke methods on it. If you have typed in the wrong ID here, this will return null and your code will crash. It will crash, and this is where you want to start taking a look at that console, that log in your web browser itself to see what the crash is that's happening here. This will not fail to compile, it will just crash at runtime. I'm saying I promise to you, TypeScript compiler, this will not be null when I start to use it. So what I want to do here now is, just at the top here, I want to add an event listener. The first argument that this takes as input is this type key of element event map. This is a really long-winded way of saying it takes a string, and the string that it takes represents one of the properties of this class. The thing that we really want to do here is I want to add an event listener for the click operation. Forgive me for interchangeably using single and double quotes here. I don't mean to switch back and forth. I don't have a good reason for why I choose to when to use it. I'm going to try to stick to double quotes, but they mean the same thing in JavaScript. So I want to add an event listener for the click operation. So when I click on this button, the behavior that I wanted to do, this is the second argument that we're going to pass. The behavior that I wanted to do is I wanted to invoke a function. The function that I wanted to invoke is this. A function that takes no arguments. This is an anonymous function that we're creating here. The function that takes no arguments, and I wanted to call on trainer controller the method add to team. I'm going to split this up over 2 lines so we can see the whole thing here. When we click on the button, call that method add to team. Yeah?
Can you explain once again what the type property of this method is for? Like what else could it be, for example?
The type property here, so I'm not going to open the JavaScript documentation, but I'll list some other events that can happen to an element that shows up on a page. So click is one of them, and click is the obvious thing where you're clicking on it. The other things are like focus. So if you use tab on your keyboard to go around to different elements on the page, they will eventually become focused, and that's an event where you can add a function or behavior to. When you tab off of it, they will unfocus, and then they will invoke whatever behavior you've specified for this. So on this class, I'm not sure if I can bring that up again here in a straightforward way. If I say here document.querySelector, whoops. Dot add event listener. I can't bring it up. I can't bring that up again. It's a key on that specific type.
So because like the document object is not that simple.
Because I've spelled it wrong. Thank you. So this element event map class has a bunch of different properties that are related to the things that can happen to an element on the page for things like click and focus and unfocus and is visible or becomes invisible, that sort of thing.
Okay, so it's like for the button, there is a class that maintains kind of the state of the button, and when it is clicked, that property is changed.
Yes. So I'm going to undo what I've added here. And we'll just go back to this state that we've got right now. So I've got this object that represents my button. I've added this new event listener to it for clicking, and I'm calling that method. I'm going to go back to my web browser now. The page should still be the same. I still just have this button on it. But I'm going to open up my developer view here. And I'm going to focus on this button. And what you can see here is it's now got this event that's been added to it. So I haven't really changed the code of this HTML document, but I've added this event. And if I click on it and I expand this operation, the function that has been added to this is now going to be, I want you to call this method on the trainer controller object. If I go to my console, what I should be able to say here is if I click on add to Pokemon, it should invoke that method. And now we can start to see that there's this log message that's starting to show up. Added to team, and here is the current state of this trainer. Added to team, here is the current state of this trainer. And after clicking it 4 times, we've got 4 whole Pokemon added to our team. So we've got our domain model instances. Our domain model instances are currently really just representing the state of the state of the objects that we've got. We've added this controller class that has the responsibility of interacting with those domain model classes. So it's creating instances of it, and it's asking those things to change their state. It's calling methods on it. So it's calling add to team here with that Pokemon that it creates. We've connected this controller by adding a button to our HTML document, and we've connected that controller to the button by adding this event listener to that button itself. So when I click on this button now, I'm starting to invoke methods that are in this class, that are on this object. The last part of this that I need to start doing is I really want to be able to have some actual view of this trainer in Pokemon. I do not want to tell my mom, open up the console log, click this button, and then look at what the output is here. That's not something that I want my parents to have to do with this setup. So I now need to be able to make a view to represent the state of the objects that we've got in this system. So I'm going to bring up my Explorer again here, and I'm going to make a new folder. The folder is under this source directory, and I'm going to call this view. And I want to add a new file under this, and I'm going to call this trainer view. This is still a TypeScript file. This is still going to be code. The trainer view structure is going to be kind of similar to what we have with the controller for now. I'm going to say this. Export default class. My view needs to have a thing that it's going to be the view for. The way that we're going to do that is have a private instance variable of type trainer. This is the thing that I'm going to be showing. Got this private instance variable of type trainer. I'm going to have a constructor here. The constructor is going to take an argument that is of type trainer. My controller is going to have the responsibility of creating the instance of this class. It has the responsibility of binding these things together. When I create this instance of a view from my controller class, it will pass the trainer that it wants to have this view show. So I want to have that here so that I can have quick reference to the thing that I am showing. And the very last thing that I want to do in the constructor for this class for now is I want to start constructing the actual view on the HTML document itself. The view classes are going to be this mixture of TypeScript code and HTML code, and kind of like dynamically building up the structure of what we're doing here. So the last thing that I want to do is I'm going to add to my document. So document is this kind of global object that we have access to in all scopes when we're running within a web browser. I'm going to say .querySelector. The thing that I want to get access to this time is the app. I want to have access to that div that shows up on my screen because that's where I want to start putting stuff. So ID, # app. I promise to you that this is not null, ! Please continue to compile the code that I've got. What I want to say to this is .innerHTML. This is a property on elements that are in our document where we can write, this is the HTML that should go inside of this thing right now. So I'm going to say inner HTML is equal to and what I want to put in here is another div. I want to give this an ID of trainer. And what I want to put inside this div is going to be a list of the Pokemon that I've got. In HTML, we've got two ways that we can represent lists. There's an idea of an unordered list. This is just bullets, so the circles is the default view of this. And the other is going to be a numbered list or an ordered list. And this is default view is these are numbers that are going to show up here. I'm going to say that for now, this is an unordered list. And so the tag that I want to put in here is UL. UL represents this idea of an unordered list. The other thing that I will want to do is I want to be able to get access to that UL element because when I'm building up this view structure, I want to be able to add Pokemon to it. And so what I'm going to say here is I'm going to create a new private variable for this class. I'm going to call this team EL, team element. This is the thing that shows up on the page. The type that it's going to have is HTML uList element. So uList element represents that UL tag. And I would like to initialize it in this class. So I'm going to say this.teamEL is equal to that document.querySelector. But I'm going to give this a slightly different looking query that I wanted to find this element for. The element that I want to find is part of this trainer. So I want to find this thing that has an ID of trainer. And what I want to find is the element that is the child of this, this thing that has ID trainer that is of type UL. So the structure that we've got here is that we're adding this div to our document. The div that we've added has a UL in it, an unordered list. And now what I'm trying to get access to is I want access to that element so that I can put the Pokemon inside of it. I want to have those be list items in this thing. So this.teamEL is equal to this UL query selector. And I'm going to say again, exclamation point. I promise that this is actually a non-null element. This will show up when I'm referring to it later. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to my page here. I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to click the button. Nothing's happening. That's fine. This is what we're expecting to see right now. But if I go to my inspector, what I should be seeing here, we didn't make the view. We didn't make the view yet. So I want to go. I'm sorry. I want to go back to my controller here. I'm going to open this up in a different pane. I want to open up trainer view here and trainer controller here. And what I want to do as part of this constructor is make an instance of that trainer view class. So I want to say here, that I've got this private instance variable called trainer view. And the thing that this takes as input is that trainer. Okay. There we go. All right. So we've got our view. We've created an instance of it here in the controller that has been constructed as part of that main.ts. And we've given that trainer view a reference to the trainer that we want it to show. So I'm going to go back to my browser now. I'm going to refresh this page. Visually, nothing has changed to the page itself, but if I look at this div app, now we have this new div that's been added to the document, and it has this unordered list that's inside of it. We have our initial view. We've got this button that is Add Pokemon. Our Add Pokemon button has this event. The event that has been added to it is that when it gets clicked on, I want it to refer to the method on the controller class. Want to invoke this add to team method. I want some behavior to happen. In the controller class, when I call add to team here, I'm making a new instance of this Pokemon class, and I'm asking the model to change. The model is changing internally, but our view is not really quite connected to the class in the way that we want it to be connected. I want the model now to tell my view that this internal state has changed, and so you should change yourself. Yes?
With the constructor trainer, would it be better for dependency injection to inject the trainer?
That's a fair question. The question is about using dependency injection to inject the trainer into this. For now, for us to try and just keep this simple, it's fine for us to make this instance, but ultimately, this class that we have here for this controller isn't really using this as a dependency in the same way that we had with our logic layer and the persistence layer before. Part of the responsibility of this controller class and of the controllers in our system will be to create instances of these classes. So while dependency injection might be an okay idea for this, their purpose, it kind of explicitly is, I need to make instances of this class. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It would probably be more appropriate to have dependency injection for not the domain model object, but like the trainer view, because like we could swap the UIs, or that is not the case here. We wouldn't sure the one.
So we're going to actually get to that right now. We're going to see how these things are connecting to each other. Because outside of having the reference to trainer, the trainer view will have no concept of other stuff that happens to be in the system. Okay. I need to be able to connect these things to each other. So I'm going to make one more file here. In my model folder, I'm going to make a new TypeScript file, and this TypeScript file is going to be called listener.ts. The purpose of listener.ts is that I want to make an interface. The interface that I want to make is such that I want to have these classes have a method that I can invoke when some event happens. So I'm going to say export default class, listener, interface, I'm sorry. And what I want to have on here is a single method called notify, and it returns void. Not going to return anything as a result of this. Interfaces in TypeScript are not quite the same as they are in Java. Interfaces in TypeScript can also have things like properties. I can say value number here. This specifies a property. When I have these interfaces, I'm not saying that that class has that property, but instead I'm inverting the idea of what an interface is. What this says is, if an instance of a class or an object have both a method called notify that returns void and a property that's called value that is of type number, then it satisfies this interface. I'm not going to say implements anywhere here anymore. I'm going to specify this interface, and then assuming that these classes have those properties, then they will satisfy that interface. My listener interface doesn't need to have a number. I just wanted to put that as a small aside for what interfaces are here, but I do want to have this idea of being able to be notified about some event. My model needs to change now, and the model needs to change such that instances of this class will have things that are interested in knowing about changes that have been made to it. So over here, I'm going to open up my trainer class. And what I want to add to my trainer class is going to be a private array of listeners. And this is going to be of type listener. I'm going to say that this dot listeners, I'm going to initialize my array. And I need to add one additional method here. The method that I want to have here is I want to register a listener. It has to be of type listener. It has to satisfy that interface. And assuming that it does satisfy that interface, I want to push it onto this array of listeners that I've got. This array is now going to be all things that are interested in knowing about changes that have happened to this instance of our domain model object. I'm not going to add this. I'll come to you in a second. I am not going to add listeners to my domain model class diagram. I'm not adding that. All objects are going to have listeners. I don't see value in adding something that everything has. So I'm not going to include this in my class diagram for this idea. Yes?
So when you said that interfaces were given in TypeScript here, this will objects will be able to push onto this array as long as they meet the conditions of the interface listener.
As long as they have a method that's called notify, yes. They don't even have to implement this interface. As long as they have a method or a function that's called notify, they will be able to be added here. Yeah. Yeah.
So like the interface there, is it similar to having that type, like type listener and then exporting it using it a similar way that we have there?
I think so.
Those are the same.
Yeah, with TypeScript, I think that that's kind of the same idea. Yes. Yeah.
We have normal interfaces though.
The value of normal interfaces is questionable here. You can still say implements, yes. If that's your question, I can still put implements on things.
Different things, like if we have like a product interface, use it.
Oh, yes, you can still have regular interfaces like that, and you can still then say that this implements that interface. The last thing that I want to add and change to this is the place where this is going to be changing is here. And so when this change has happened, I want to be able to notify all of the listeners that something has happened. So I'm going to say here, notify all. This is a private method that's inside of this class. And I'm going to say this dot listeners dot for each. And what I want all of these things to do is for each listener, call l.notify. So this notifies all listeners. My state has changed here, so I want to notify all. So in my class, I've got this array of listeners. These are all the things that want to know about changes that have happened to me. Listeners can register themselves here. And when I've made a change to my team, I want to notify all of these listeners. So for each of them, call this method notify. I'm going to go back here, and now I want to open up Trainer View. This view is interested in knowing about changes that have happened to that class. And so what I want to say here is this dot trainer, or trainer, dot register listener. I am interested in knowing about things that have happened to that instance of trainer. If I were to try and say this, what this tells me is, no, you can't. You don't satisfy that interface. But when I add this method, now I do satisfy this interface. I can, I think to your question, I can implements listener. I can do that, but I don't have to. As long as I have this property, I satisfy that interface, and I can be passed to places where that interface is expected. So I want to be notified when changes to this thing have happened. And what I want to do when changes to this thing have happened is I would like to update the internal state of the list of Pokemon that are showing up. So I'm first going to say this. I would like to take everything that's in Team EL. Team EL is this UL element that we've got here. And I would like to replace the children with nothing. I would like to empty this element, please. As it is right now, it is empty, but I'm going to put stuff in there. So every time this updates, I want to empty it. I want to remove all of the list items that are inside that list. Then what I want to do is I would like to add all of the team members to this thing. So I'm going to say this.team trainer dot team, so this property team. For each of these things, what I would like to do, each thing in this team is a Pokemon. I'd like to make an element. So this document, we're not going to query existing elements this time. Now we're going to make an element. I want to add a new thing to this. The element that I want to create is of type Li. Within an unordered list, this UL, the thing that we have inside of it to show up these bullets, is a list item, an Li. I want to make an Li to represent the Pokemon. And what I want to say is the inner HTML of this Pokemon EL is equal to, and I'm going to use a template string here. I'm going to say strong. I want this to be bolded when it shows up on the page. And I want to say p.hp. That's the only property I have on this, so all I can show is that the current HP of the thing that I've added to this. The very last thing that I want to do here is I want to say this.teamEL. This is that unordered list. I want to append a child to this. And the child that I want to append is this Pokemon EL, the one that I just created. Okay, I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to my web browser. I'm going to refresh this page. And what I'm like really desperately hoping, because we've got 30 seconds left, is when I click this button, list items start to show up. I click the button, I call the controller makes an instance of this view. The view registers itself as, I want to know about things changing in the state of this trainer. When I click the button, the controller changes the state of the trainer, and the trainer lets that view know, hey, my internal state changed. I want you to do all of this stuff. Okay, very, very quickly, I want to come back to this. I'm going to say QAll here. I want to say get status. So right now I've added a bunch of stuff to this. I want to add all of this stuff. So git add dot I'm going to say git commit, and I'm going to say here that the message is MVC MVP. This is my minimal implementation of MVC for us right now. And I will push this up to the course, to the project repository for this. We'll spend a little bit of time reviewing what we've done next class, but at this point, you should begin to be able to apply this software architecture in TypeScript, and you should begin to, a little bit, implement these simple graphical interfaces. Thanks all for sticking around for one